Hello and welcome to the Data Dice YouTube channel. In the last video we covered some native string functions in BigQuery, and today we will look into some of the most important date and time functions in BigQuery. You can transform timestamps in many ways. For example, matching the format from other systems or changing the look in your dashboards. Before I watch this video, please check out the other videos from our free SQL course on this YouTube channel. Or go to our website, link in the description, and watch the videos there. But let's start with the date and time functions now. So this video will have the same structure as we did it for the string functions. Date and time functions are already prepared into the SQL editor in BigQuery, and then we will go step by step through it. I will discuss some stuff, we'll explain some things, and we will execute them step by step to see, okay, how it changed, what are the different behaviors, and so on and so on. So let's paste it in here. Then we go to the top, and then we see here the first one. So the first one, you see it's a query without a from. What's going on here? So what does it say? It says, okay, select. So and then it says, okay, I want to have at the end 4 different columns. Due to that I do not have a from, I do not separate it into different rows. So at the end we have just 1 row and 4 different columns. So what we're doing here, we are getting different formats of the current timestamp, date, whatever. So I would say let's executing it, and then you also already see that it's basically working. And now you see here the current date. So you see that I'm currently recording the video on the 2nd of September 2024. And then you even see here the timestamp, important timestamps on UTC basis. So German time, I have currently 14:30. Here it's 12:20, so 12:29 or 13:29, whatever. Then we have current date time. Difference between timestamp, date time will be coming maybe later in a separate video. Not so important for us. Then also more important is the timestamp and the date. That is also what we are currently working with. Date time is most important when you need to change the time zone. And current time, just really the time, not any date information side. So with this approach, you say, okay, please just give me a current date, a current timestamp, the current date time, the current time on the time when the query executed. So after the execution, we see again, so after refreshing and doing the query again, it's getting again the next current date or the current date, the current timestamp, and so on and so on. With that, you are getting always on the time where the execution happened, the current date, timestamp, whatever. For example, important if you want to save in the table when the last update of the data happened. Sometimes important when you want to give the people the information, okay, when the data got the last time updated, or also for any kind of monitoring important. It's also additionally important for timestamp or duration calculations. If you want to know, okay, how much time passed from today till a certain order date or till fulfillment date or till the event date, whatever, or how much time is still happening or how much days are still left until a certain event is happening. So then always the current date, current timestamp is quite important. So that's, I would say, the easiest one. Due to that, we'll start with that. So let's go to the next one, where we then also need actually data again. So I took here for all our examples again the bike share trips table, because it's especially for you easier, because you have that data available. You can exactly execute this query and it's working. So let's start this one. I will always already starting it, and then you can basically check if you can use it, if you want to try it out. So what we are doing here. It's super important also for the next columns that start date is not a good word here, because the start date at the end is not a date, it's a timestamp. The problem is I cannot really changing it because it's a public data set, and I do not want to create just a copy in my data set. And then there I could change the name, but then you cannot use the exact same query. So due to that, I kept it as it is. So super important, start date is at the end a timestamp, which you also see quite a lot in certain APIs or in certain data, that it could be the case that the date column at the end is a timestamp. Because sometimes the people does not give a correct explanation of the column or whatever, or even not a good column name at the end. Yes, so due to that, we have here start TS, which is at the end just the raw start date column. And then you can do a date of start date, which is the real start date. Because the date says, okay, at the end a cast, where you can say, okay, take the start date, which is a timestamp, and just making a date out of it. So basically get rid of the time part in your data. Then you have here the start date, then you have here your end TS, which is again the end date, and I'm doing exactly the same thing, so just getting the date really of the end date, which we then also call the end date. Yes, so I think that's also quite easy. The date column or the date functionality should have one or two other things you can do, I think, if I'm not wrong. But whatever, most important is just that we get rid of the day of the time part in the timestamp. Then you have the extract. Let's check out the extract. The extract is already now getting a little bit more interesting. So I always putting the start date, the war column, basically the war value inside the query or inside the result. And now you can say, okay, from the start date, please just give me the year. And I call that now start date extract year. Or give me the quarter. That is even not easily seeable in the start date. And due to that, you see here, for example, that this one has now fourth quarter of this year. Makes sense. Month, ISO week. Week Wednesday means the week starts on Wednesday. I think you can give any date of the week, if I'm not wrong. So let's say due to whatever reason, your week starts on Wednesday, or your monitoring should start, or your dashboarding, the week should start on a Wednesday. You could do it with that. And then you know, okay, which week of the year is it when the week starts on a Wednesday? Then I just want to have the day. Here important is the date of the month. Yes, so here you see 28, 28, 31 and so on. So that you see here. And then you also see day of year. Quite easy, I think. So give me the date of the year. I'm currently see here, I basically had 2 times the same name. Then I already discussed that. Start date, extract date 1 means I have that already. So this should be date of year. But whatever, not important. Just for you that it's clear at the end. So yeah, so that's it. So you just need extract, then the time or the part you want. Yes, so which date part you want or in which format you want to have it. So yeah, then always a from. It is like that. It's quite uncommon. I'm not sure if there's any other BigQuery functionality where you put inside a functionality a from. Not sure, but at least it's quite uncommon. So usually you're working with comma separated values or whatever. Then the start date, so the time or the date column where you want to get the data from. Well, and then just a usual alias. So that is already quite interesting. And you see our query modeling before in the other video. You saw, for example, that we also did the concat. I mean, the concat is something you can use here easily because you could say, okay, give me the year, but additionally, I would like to have the quarter. So what you can do is concat, extract quarter from start date, comma, maybe a Q or whatever, or minus, however, whichever format you like, comma, and then extract year from state data. And like that, you are getting a cool format for your quarterly dashboardings, reports, whatever. So this is something you could do. The next one is the timestamp trunk. The timestamp trunk is doing the following. At first, as the first parameter in your functionality, you set again the column name or the value you want to add. So the start date. And then you say, okay, please at the end cut or trunk the date on the year, which means when you're looking on our first example, you have 2017 and then 30th of June. That's not important. And it says, okay, it gives me at the end just the year, and for the year, just the first date of the first month of this year. So the 1st of January 2017. And now you can do that step by step. You can say, okay, please give me the truncate or the cutted date for the quarter. I hope that is somehow understandable. Day, it just puts to 1 and also the minutes and the hours and so on. Also that quite easy, I think. And for the month, it's the same. So it's just taking this from the start date, the year and the month in this case. And the rest, so the date were put to 1 at the end, so the first date of the month, and time and so on for sure is not important, so it puts to 0. So at the end, the trunk is taking, okay, from when on you want to have, from which part of the date or of the timestamp you want to set as first occasional time. For the week, it's the same, or kind of the same. So we have once important, we have the ISO week and the week. The ISO week is important for some countries. For example, for Germany, it's quite important. For other countries, they have a little bit different rules how to count the weeks of the year, because especially this is important for the ISO week or just for week. So especially when the year is changing, when the first week of the several years is happening at the end. So that's the important part, and that's different between ISO week and week. I do not want to go into detail here, just that you understand there's an ISO week and a week. For Germany, for example, ISO week is quite important. Yes, so due to that, here in that case, it gives you for the 30th of June 2017, it gives you the 26th because that is the Monday, so the first date of this ISO week of the week where the 30th of June 2017 is a part of. Yes, for the week when it's on Tuesday, then for sure makes sense. It's then the 27th of June, so one day after. Because here, for example, I said that the week should start on Tuesday. As I said for the functionality before, so for the extract, here in these brackets after week, you can put there every day of the week inside, depending on with which date you want to start. If you put nothing inside, it should start with Monday then. So that's quite easily about this one. And then we have day, and then we're already starting step by step with the time functionalities as well. So here we have then the date quite easily. So for the 2017th of June, the 30th, it's just also taking the 30th of June 2017, but it does not care about the time you have. As you see here, it's not like a date data type, it's still a timestamp data type, which means it's still showing and accessing the time part in the column, but it just set it to 0 at the end. But in theory or technically, it's still a timestamp, it's not a date. That's quite important. For the hour, it's then the same, so taking the hour and putting everything before to 0. And the same for minutes, seconds, yes, and that's it. So I think quite easily. So with that, super important sometimes to know, okay, we have here a date, okay, when was the first week of the corresponding week of the column, or same for month and so on. If you want to say, okay, how much time passed from today or from a certain date time to, or timestamp, to the first month, first day of the month, and so on and so on. So sometimes quite useful. And the same for sure you also have with last day. Also a functionality which is quite new still. Before you always needed to do the shady stuff in BigQuery and making your own functionality that it works. And now it's quite easy because now there's a native function in BigQuery. Yes, so I did the start date again as first column. And then we have here the last day. I put it to datetime, just that you also see that. So, and then here I have the start date, which is a timestamp, as you know already. And then I have here the year, quarter, month, ISO week, and week Tuesday. And it's doing exactly the same thing as timestamp trunk, just the other way around. And it's on day level, which means you cannot use it for example, hour, minute, or seconds. That's not possible. So just for full day values at the end, and for sure not for the day itself. Makes no sense at the end. So here it shows, okay, give me from the start date the last year date at the end it is. So which means, okay, it's the 31st of December 2017 for the start date. If we would switch, let's see if it's working. Yeah, here, so here you have 2016. So then this one is the last date. In that case, quite easy. For the quarter and for the month, it's then off, especially for the quarter, it's not that easy. So here you need to calculate, okay, when was the last, or when is the last date of the corresponding quarter from the start date, or from the start timestamp in this case. Last month, I think same. So maybe last month is a little bit misleading. So it's the last day of the month, right? So maybe like that you should name it. Last day of the quarter, and so on and so on. Last day of the ISO week, and so on and so on. But yes, I think it's clear. So here you know, okay, if this was on a particular week, and the last day of the week of this particular week was the 27th of March 2016. Then we have date up and date sub, and timestamp add and timestamp sub. So here we have now a lot of columns just for some examples. So I will just mark all of them. As you know, Command E, like that, you can just execute the part in the SQL editor you marked with your cursor. Which means we have still a start date, no changes here. Then we have add year, so I'm adding 3 years to the start date. And due to that date add, I need to change the start date to a date, so to be a valid date. And this is then start date add here, that's how I called it, which makes sense. So we had here the 15th of December 2017, now we have the 15th of December 2020. Here I sub 3 years. So I subtract 3 years, which is then 2013. And then I'm adding here 3 quarters, subtracting 3 quarters, always from the same start date here. So I think quite easy. So you can do it per month, or a monthly level, on week, on day. For the timestamp for sure, so you can do it once on the date level per day and on the timestamp level per day. The only difference, as you see here, is here, due to that it's a date functionality, it's then really a date column. Here it's a timestamp column, so it's even taking the time and adding or subtracting them 3 days, for example, 5, 10 days, whatever. Yes, so here and here I'm just subtracting or adding 3 hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds and microseconds if possible. As you see here, so here we have then a milliseconds area, so here we have the seconds, quite easy. And then here I'm even adding the milliseconds, so then it's adding here some new values to the original one. I'm here subtracting them, and here then even microseconds, so really just the last digit of the whole format. Yes, I think quite easy, quite understandable. Then we have the timestamp diff. Here I decided to take 2 columns with each other, so the end date and the start date, because that is, I would say, for bike share trips, it makes total sense to do it like that. Because you know when the trip has started and you know when the trip was ended. So what is for you quite important is, okay, how long the trip was taken. And due to that, what I did here, I take at first the end date, then the start date, so the 2 dates where I want to build the diff from. And then on which level I want to do it. I want to do it on second basis. And then dividing it by 60, so that I have at the end the trip duration in minutes. Now you can say, okay, why you are not just doing here, instead of putting second, why you're not just putting minute and then not dividing it by 60? Possible, but then it's rounding for you the minutes at the end, and it's not that accurate as when you do it like that. I think it's also easy on the dashboard side maybe as well, but especially on BigQuery, when you have your diffs on seconds, and depending on where you need it, if you need it for 1 column on minute basis, then you are just dividing it by 60. Or if you needed another value per second, then you are taking the value you already get. It's just my opinion, you can decide whatever you like. Yes, so due to that, we have then here the numbers of end date and start date. Maybe I'm adding the start date and the end date here. Makes maybe sense. Start date, end date. No, maybe let's do it like that. The same calculation you can do with the date diff function. There for sure, then just the only difference is that you are cutting the timestamp part, and then you can just calculate the diff in weeks or also in days is possible, or in years or whatever. And just if a full year passed between these 2 dates, then year is set to 1 to 2, whatever. So that's super important, right? So if you just have 364.9 days left or passed between 2 dates, it's still a 0, because there's not a full 1 year diff between these 2 dates. So that's quite important when you build that stuff. Due to that, I'm usually making it quite granular, so saying per second or on a date, I would do it on daily basis. And then on my own, I can decide, okay, do I want to need it, or do I need it then in at least in months and in years and so on. That's quite easy. If you need it then on weekly basis or whatever, also possible. There are some important things to know, but whatever. So here you see, okay, the tour, so same day, it started at 1908 and it was finished on 1936. So you needed, or the persons needed, around 27 minutes. Super important thing, also something I usually forget, is in the diff you need at first the timestamp where you at least think it's the timestamp, the last one. So it's super important that the end date is the first parameter and the start is the second parameter. If I would do it the other way around, not a big thing is happening. You just realize that basically everything is minus. So that's the only difference between them, because it's calculating the start date in comparison to the end date, and now you have all your durations in minuses because the start date comes before the end date, so the end date needs to be the first parameter. But that's it. I'm usually just trying it out and then I say, okay, I need to switch it, and then it works. So and then we have maybe I would say the 2 most important ones and also the last ones. So it's format and parse timestamp. What does that say? So let's take that one and then I can show you. So after the query executes, we see here different examples. So we see a start date, still plain one. And then we see format timestamp, weird combination of characters with percentages, minuses, whatever. Then the start date, it's always the same, just the characters here changes at the end. And then I have here just start date, format 1, 2, 3, whatever. Let's take a look at first at the outcome. So what is it doing? It's showing still the full start date, because I'm just put it here as a value. And then it shows me, okay, this one is then transformed to December, then as it looks like the day of the month and then the year. In between there are minuses. So important first one is, this one is a plain string. BigQuery has at the end no idea what exactly this is. This one, BigQuery knows it's a timestamp, and due to that you have different functionalities as we showed already with timestamp, add, sub and so on. So to have the correct data type on your columns is quite important. For start dates, super easy, it's a timestamp. This one is a plain string. BigQuery at the end has no idea anymore that this one was before or is showing date format at the end. So here kind of the same. So it shows you 12 looks like the month, then the 31st is the date, and then just the last 2 digits of the year. And here you have then format 3, which is then just the time, but with checking if it's AM or PM. Also important. So here you have PM, here you have AM. Then this one is the week, if I'm not wrong. Yes, so this should be the week. And this one is the week, just another format. So it should be ISO week. This one should be just week. So here you see already there's difference, 53rd week, 52nd week. So always of the year for sure. Then the 0, we can quickly check then. And then the time again. So yeah, I know. This one is the day of the week. So it's the 0, so it should be the Monday, if I'm not wrong, of the week. But we can quickly check. So what does that mean? All these characters which are starting with a percentage, so in this case B, D and Y, are basically some kind of placeholder or of a format element, it's called in BigQuery, which behind there is a logic how BigQuery changes then from or gets the information from a timestamp or from a date and putting it into another value. In this case then, for example, with %B, you're saying, okay, I want to have from this timestamp the month, but I do not want to have the number of the month. I want to have the first 3 digits of the month when you are writing it. How you find these? So D is then, yeah, as I said, so the day of the month, and %year or uppercase Y is then the year at the end, the full year. Here you have, I think it was X, yes. No, sorry, X. Here you see, for example, X. You just need to type X and then you have this format already. So it's taking from the timestamp exactly this format. So how you find this is, we also put a link into the description of this video, is the format elements. So you have it once for date and for time parts, or just for date parts, whatever. And these you can use then in format timestamp, which will come in some seconds, and parse date and parse timestamp. And here at the end you just need to go through it. So you have %A, for example, to even have the full weekday name in English. Then you have here %B, the full month name. I use this %B just in, so it's also important if you have lowercase or uppercase, super important. So the abbreviated month name and so on and so on. Yes, so here you have %G and %G in upper and lowercase. Then you have the year or just the last 2 digits. But here ISO year and so on, super important. I use just the Y, which is then this one, which is not ISO, yeah, regulated or format, whatever. You can even have the time zone again, and so on and so on and so on. So you just at the end, whatever you need, you just need to go through here, checking if it's there, and then adding it to your functionality here. It's just something you need to train. And this one here, for example, the colon or the minuses here, the dashes, it's just something I added. So I can also do here 3 or whatever, or make minus, 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 slash, slash, should also work, we can check. Something like that. Super easy possible. It's just at the end like a concat, you could say. Due to that I did not put a percentage sign before the dashes or before this one, there is not a big problem at the end, or yeah, it's just a concat, as I said. As you see here, exactly, we have the 3 dashes, we have then slash slash and then minuses, so whatever you like you can put here. So just the percentage is an important sign, and then the character you put afterwards, and that's it. So then the parse timestamp, here I basically put again static values, because we do not have a really good column for that in our BigQuery dataset or table. So what is happening here? It's doing the exact opposite. So format timestamp, changing a valid date or timestamp column into certain different string columns with a certain structure based on the timestamp or on the date. In the parse timestamp, it's taking a string representation of a date or of a timestamp and putting that into a valid timestamp or date in your data. So which means we get, for example, from another system, whatever, you are getting the December minus 30 minus 2017. With your human eyes, you know, okay, it's the 30th of December 2017. That's it. For BigQuery, you need to tell, okay, the first one is the month, the first 3 digits of the month, so it's %B. So you just need to go here, and then you need to find %B, should be then at the top. Yes, so here, every month of the month name. That's it, January, for example. So this is what you need. Then we have a minus here in between. Then we have the %D, it's the date of the month. And then %year, %Y, it's 2017. That is something a little bit complicated, as I said, because you have %Y and uppercase G. There you need to be a little bit careful, depending on what you need, but in general it is exactly this. Yes, so then you have here X. So basically what I just took, I took the same formats I also had here and just put it here and then added an equivalent example. But I think it's understandable. So here, the second parameter should be the value which format you are getting from a column or from any kind of other system. And here you're putting, okay, in this string, so in this string, where is which information to get the most out of it and making a valid timestamp. Because as you see here, when you just put the 25 inside and you say, okay, it's a week information. Let's quickly check, what should be? Week number of the year, yes, exactly. It just, so yeah, super important. It tells you, okay, it's the 27th of December, 1970. Why 1970? I think everybody who already did things in programming or even SQL and so on, the time for these technical systems started on 1970. I think it's at the end just a regulation or something every people or every IT guy basically agreed on someone. And due to that, you do not know the year. BigQuery says it's 1970. So that's it. Yes, and due to that, when you just say, okay, there was something with week 52, it has no idea about which year. So it's just saying, okay, year 1970 and then 27th of December. That's it. After the string functions, you also know the most important date and time functions in BigQuery now. I think the format and parse functions are important, especially to match the different timestamp structures from different systems, or change it to a local and more known format. The diff functionality is important as well to calculate the duration between 2 timestamps. For example, to calculate how much time it takes to fulfill an order. Furthermore, you can check out our blogs on Medium, our posts on LinkedIn, and our website to get more insights into the world of SQL. The important links you'll find in the description, and then see you in the next video.